something really cool happened yesterday, and I wanted to share it. I thought that this is awesome. We are heading back to the moon. This is only the first test. So this is the test. So they're gonna have, this is Artemis 1. This is the first test. They're gonna have an Artemis 2 and an Artemis 3. Artemis 1 doesn't have anybody on the plane or on the rocket. It's empty. So they can survey what's going on around the moon. The next one is going to have some people, and then the third one is going to have people actually landing on the moon. So this is just the test run. Good morning, Warren. I fucking miss you. See what happens when you turn into a grown-up? You never hang out with us anymore. Miss you, Warren. So yeah, we'll start and watch this. The video of it actually going out into l'espace. Watch this part really quick.
SLS now traveling 607 miles per hour. You're looking at 8.8 million pounds of maximum thrust. Quiet here in the loops in mission control. The 4 core stage engines are throttling down ahead of passing through max Q. Now 1 minute, 21 seconds into the flight, traveling at 1,420 miles per hour. The 4 core stage engines are back at maximum thrust. The next major milestone will be for the solid rocket boosters to cut off and jettison at about 2 minutes and 11 seconds into the flight, so about 30 seconds from now. Again, quiet here in Mission Control Houston as teams continue monitoring the flight of Artemis 1. We're now 16 miles downrange from the launch pad at Kennedy Space Center, traveling over 2,800 miles per hour. Standing by for solid rocket booster jettison and shortly thereafter.
I love the orange color. Like, that's really cool. See, that's what was familiar to me when I saw that yesterday. We had some satellites that some rockets were shooting out into our outer atmosphere a few years back, and this is what it looked like in the sky, but it wasn't as yellow. It was more blues and purples. So this is beautiful to me, like seeing it in the yellow gold colors. Look at how gorgeous that is. That almost looks like some pretty like gold dust or something from like a beginning of like a Disney movie. So I thought that was really pretty. I've seen stuff like that in real life, where it goes through the atmosphere and it makes those pretty colors and stuff. It's so gorgeous to see it in real life as well. So here's what the rocket looks like. I thought that was really cool. And then they have it. So there's with all the back parts taken off, a lot of the fuel tanks fallen off. Here's what the rest of it looks like. I thought that was really interesting. And then so this is the next one I have is, it looks like Artemis launch tests, NASA's mission return. This is why we are going to the moon. One of my friends was telling me yesterday they were wanting to see how like solar flares out in space outside of our atmosphere works with the female body, and see how that works, or how the female body can handle that, because they don't have that information yet. But let's see what this one says, because I think this is a little bit different.
First time in more than half a century.
They've got the flag up now, and you can see the stars and stripes.
As soon as the end of August, the space agency plans to conduct the first launch of the massive rocket system for its moon exploration program, Artemis. The first mission, Artemis 1, will send a spacecraft on an uncrewed trip around the moon.
So Artemis 1 is a test run. It's a test run for the rocket system, for the spacecraft, for the ground systems, the ground infrastructure.
It will be a critical step towards landing.
You are going to hell, Warren. That was horrible.
People on the moon by 2025. But over the last few years, NASA and its partners have experienced a range of technical, legal, and cost-related delays.
There's a lot of elements that you have to get right, that NASA and its partners have to get right to sort of make all that technical choreography work.
So how does NASA plan to achieve this historic mission? And how could Artemis 1 pave the way for future space exploration beyond the lunar surface? There are several key space vehicles involved in NASA's effort to get humans back on the moon.
So there's SLS, that's the kind of rocket system that starts the journey. And on top of that is Orion, which separates from the rocket and then begins its journey to lunar orbit.
There will also be a separate lunar lander designed to take astronauts from lunar orbit down to the moon's surface. That lander, designed by SpaceX, is expected to be used on a future Artemis launch currently planned for 2025. The first mission, Artemis 1, will send the crew capsule into orbit around the moon for about 6 weeks, allowing NASA to test a series of critical systems, like life support, before it puts people on board. Artemis 2 will follow a similar path, but with astronauts on board. And Artemis 3 will carry people to the moon's surface. NASA says this mission will be historic for other reasons as well.
It's opening the door for the first woman and the first person of color to set foot on the moon.
Artemis 1 will serve as a pathfinding mission, laying a foundation for future trips to the moon. It will also be the first test flight of NASA's new Space Launch System mega rocket and the Orion crew capsule. Another key objective will be testing the spacecraft's heat shield. It's meant to protect the Orion capsule from the extreme temperatures it will encounter entering Earth's atmosphere at Mach 32, which is around 24,500 miles per hour.
The idea is to run all the hardware, all the software through its paces and show that the rockets can fire the spacecraft out of the gravitational pull of Earth, and the spacecraft can separate and travel to the moon and get back to this planet safely.
NASA will also be monitoring Orion's navigation systems and its resilience when traveling through high radiation areas. 3 mannequins on board will be fitted with sensors to determine how astronauts will fare on the flight. Another test will be recovering the spacecraft after it splashes down in the ocean. Meanwhile, the vehicles that NASA plans to use for Artemis 1 have faced delays. The mission was originally scheduled to take off in 2021.
The contractors that are building the different elements of the SLS rocket system and Orion have run into technical challenges and have had to work those out. They've faced supply chain problems. And some of these rockets, NASA has not attempted to have built and launch in quite a long time. So part of the challenge was like simply getting back up to speed on creating again really big, really powerful rockets.
The first Artemis rocket and the broader Artemis program are expected to be costly. Last November, NASA's Inspector General forecasted the agency would spend $93 billion over more than a dozen years on Artemis, with key costs for the first launch expected to be around $4.1 billion. NASA leaders have said the agency is pushing to reduce costs for Artemis and streamline operations.
Some of the contractors that are building the vehicles have said part of the cost question is because we've been in this development mode, building these for the first time. And when we build future rockets and spacecraft, the cost should come down because we're simply in production mode and not in this developmental stage of creating the vehicles for the first time.
There are more long-term ambitions for NASA's Artemis programs.
Astronauts will live and work in deep space.
That is a good question, Yona. I have no idea. I think they have like these like suction toilets or something. I have no clue. Like, yeah, what if they're like walking around on the moon in their spacesuits and they're like, oh shit, I gotta take a poop. Probably no tests with monkeys anymore. Ew. Chocolate mashed potatoes. Ew. Last time we went to the moon, the space capsule had as much computer power as a digital watch. I know, I was thinking about that with this whole thing that's been going on. Like, it was really the wild, wild west back then. And motherfuckers really went out to the moon knowing that there was like a 95% possibility that they would never return or make it back alive. It's nuts to me how they were able to go all the way to the moon like that.
And we'll develop the science and technology to send the first humans to Mars.
The space agency has plans to build Gateway, a multi-purpose outpost orbiting the moon. It has also discussed developing a base camp on the lunar surface. More broadly, NASA says its return to the moon efforts will help prepare for future exploration of Mars.
Artemis now has a vision of sending astronauts back to the moon and creating sort of a sustained infrastructure, pursuing science.
I knew someone was going to say that. That's what my husband was saying this morning or last night when I was like, we're going to the moon. And he's all, finally? I'm like, you motherfucker, we've already been there. God damn it. That's why I brought up, I have another video after this too, is why we never returned to the moon, because I knew someone was going to bring it up because my husband brings it up all the time. I hear it so often. I'm like, there's a reason why we haven't gone back yet.
Yeah. And the idea is that NASA will build all of that infrastructure, know-how, hardware to sort of make that happen and use that knowledge base to pursue the next frontier, which is some sort of trip to Mars.
As the Artemis 1 launch date nears, NASA is wrapping up several key tests to ensure all the rocket systems will be ready to go.
That 2025 timeline for getting people down to the surface of the moon and back is coming up relatively
I think
quickly.
this is very interesting that they're wanting to put like a lunar base on the moon so that way they can travel to Mars, because I understand the science of it. So like here in not in America, wow, here on Earth, we have an atmosphere. So you need like a certain amount of fuel to get out of here because of the gravitational pull that we have. We need to be able to push ourselves outside of the atmosphere to get, at least just to get to space, to where you don't need as much. You can even use like hydraulics and air compression to move about even in space. So I feel like what a really good idea for them doing this, at least to be able to travel to Mars when it comes to like space exploration and stuff. I feel like this is a good idea because there's no gravitational pull, barely any, on the moon. There's no atmosphere on the moon. So if we use the moon as like a halfway point to getting to Mars, I think that would, as long as they timed it perfectly, you know, obviously their scientists are going to figure out a way to time it perfectly. So let's say it's the certain time of year where Mars is like right behind the Earth on, you know, its rotation around the sun. It's right behind the moon, or right behind Earth, and the moon is in between Earth and Mars. What they could plan out is having them use that fuel to get us outside of the atmosphere, get us into space, do the landing on the moon, have people, you know, like staying there, refueling, packing up, doing everything they can to prep to take everything or whatever they need to take to Mars. And since there is no atmosphere on the moon, it's a lot easier and a lot less costly to take someone from the moon to Mars because of the lack of fuel to exit the atmosphere and all of that. So I feel like that would be, like I said, it would be a really good halfway point for us to get to Mars on occasions, so that way we can like go from Earth to Mars, chill on, or go from Earth to the moon, chill on the moon for a little bit, pack up everything, and then head out to Mars with a lot less fuel. So I think that if this does happen, I think this is actually a really good idea for space exploration. I really hope that they don't get into the whole mining of the moon and stuff, because I do watch a lot of, you know, movies where, you know, the moon is like broken up into a million pieces. If you ever seen the movie, what is it? It had the time traveler. In that movie, he ends up like way far in the future, finds out that the moon is like completely destroyed, broken into bunches of pieces, and you can see it up in the air, broken into pieces. And then he goes like another million years into the future, and everything's back down to like caveman days again. So I think it would be really, really interesting to see if we can do kind of like a lunar Mars land, or a lunar landing to get to Mars. I just hope that we don't become, you know, super capitalist with the moon. So that's one of my biggest fears on that. Oh, we went to the moon, all right. Just haven't gone back because of residents there told us to fuck off, right? Oh, yay. Second video's done. Yeah. Fuck them copyrights. We're like 20 minutes of radio silence. They blamed on being on the far side. Yeah. They did say that they saw some stuff. So maybe it's just been so long that they're like, it was probably, you know, them just being scared out there and like their paranoia. So we can go out there again and nothing will happen. So yeah, helium-3 is on the moon and can be used for power generation. Yeah, that's my biggest concern, is the mining the mining operations that they're wanting to do out there. Just because I fear for the vulnerability of the moon and how weak it actually is.